I think we're live, looking good. First things first, when I'm baking with my oven, is to make sure it's nice and clean. And I never clean it, I never take the ash out of my oven straight after baking, partly because it's always hot. And I find that, I think by leaving the ash in, it's going to deter lizards and snakes and other creepy crawlies that might want to come in to a nice warm dry place. And I'm kind of figuring that they're not going to be so keen on so much ash. So what I'm doing here, I've got my homemade scraper, piece of bamboo with a bit of wood on it, and I've got a handy little opening at the back of the oven. It makes it super easy to get all the ash straight out the back. And just collect it and put it on the garden. And so once I've cleaned this, we'll get the fire started. That's the most essential thing to do right at the beginning, to get the oven nice and hot, and then I'll go back up into the kitchen and work on the pizza dough. The good thing about having that hole in the back is that it keeps this front area clear, so it's not full of ash. And it doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. Good enough is good. Because once I get the fire going, once everything's in there, it's going to get a bit messy anyway, and then we'll always work to then, once it's hot, I'll make it nice and clean. That's just my one of my thermometers going in there. Pop that in towards the back, and then as I work with the fire and get it up to heat, then I'll reduce the amount of draft coming in the back. I'll fill that hole with a couple of bricks that I'll put in there. And that just regulates the temperature a bit better, regulates the airflow nicely. Start with some bamboo and then get my trusty kindling. This is fabulous kindling wood that we can buy locally in Thailand that is super resinous, so it ignites beautifully easily. Great way to get a barbecue started. Or a pizza oven fire. Start off with a bit of trusty bamboo. Doesn't go to waste after I've finished with it in the garden. These have probably been tomato stacks or bean poles or something like that. It goes on the fire. I was going to see about messaging this to Facebook. Hopefully someone will be watching it. One good thing I've noticed with the oven at this stage, I don't know if you can see that in there, but the smoke's just hanging, and that shows me that it's going to be holding my temperature nicely, that as the smoke's hanging there, the heat must also be hanging there before it passes out the flue. So you can see the opening in the back there, and that'll be drawing the air in. Look at that, you can even see the fire inside. A bad camera angle, so we'll just get this started, get it so a good flame on it, get some bigger pieces of wood in there, and then I'll head back up to the kitchen and start working on the dough for the pizzas, and I'm also going to make a loaf of bread today. My initial idea for doing this was to try out as many different things as possible, but I've decided that's going to be too difficult, so I'm just going to pare it back a bit and concentrate, just like today I said, mainly just on the pizzas and the bread. And the bread is a loaf that I've been baking for years, probably in a similar form for probably 20 years or more, but usually doing it either in the oven inside, hardly at all probably, but mostly using a bread maker. But for the past, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, the small paddle in the bread maker, the mixer in the bread makers, got lost, so I've been mixing it and kneading it by hand and then just using the bread maker for cooking. So it's a loaf of bread that I'm pretty familiar with, and I've tweaked it a bit over the years, tweaked the recipe a little bit, mainly the mix for the wholemeal and white flour mixture, and a few other techniques that I've learned recently. Let's add some more fuel to this fire. It's good, my wood's nice and dry. Last time I fired it up last week, we'd had days and days of rain, so the wood was all damp and a bit nasty. It was a bit hard to get going. But my technique for bread making I've improved recently because I've been watching YouTube videos. They're great. Found this one guy, a Frenchman, who bakes and has just got tons of experience in using a technique that he's shown me. Rather than kneading it a lot, is to slap and fold it, and it helps keep the hydration in the bread really good, and it just rises beautifully. So I've been able to adjust my mix of wholemeal and plain flour to add more wholemeal but still get a nicely risen wholemeal loaf because of using this technique. That we'll show you that when we're inside. I'm still practicing it. This guy that can't remember his name, Richard somebody, he's obviously done it thousands of times, if not tens of thousands of times, and he makes it look easy. But so far it's quite interesting because it's quite a different technique, and it involves just a lot of practice to get used to it, and because working with a quite soft, quite moist dough, bits tend to flick off and fly off and that, and I had them bits of dough stuck around my kitchen. But now I've practiced a little bit, I'm a bit more tidier with it, and it should be okay. That fire's looking pretty good. I'll just let it burn a little bit more and then add some bigger logs, some bigger pieces to it, and then we'll go inside. So all the wood that I'm using is just prunings from the garden, and mainly from old lummi trees, longan trees that the neighbours have got, that we can make use of the prunings from their trees, and from some that have been left over from ours, and then others. I've got a big pile of wood that we had a bunch of the trees at the front cut recently, just trimmed them back, so they're all in a stack, cut into logs, ready to go into the fire once they're nice and dry. Just put the door on for now, and hopefully that'll draw the air in through and out the flue rather than in the face. So it's a slow process when it starts like this. It's certainly not like firing up an electric oven or a gas oven, but the results are well worth it, and something that's it's a different feel. You turn on an electric oven or a good gas oven, and you can dial in the temperature and it'll hold that temperature. With an oven like this, it's all about feel and getting used to it. And because when did we finish? Maybe October, November last year, we started using it and used it a fair amount during the high season. We cooked some nice pizzas for people, for our customers, and they enjoyed that. But as I worked on my dough technique, on our pizza technique, and working with the oven, I realised, no, I need to spend a bit of time in a short succession to bake and just get a real feel for it, to really get used to it. So that's what I'm doing this week. And I thought, why not live stream it as well? I've never tried live streaming, and you can keep me company while I'm doing it. So the plan is for this week is to spend time firing up the oven. Hopefully I'll be able to manage it every day, every morning, and to cook some pizzas and to cook some breads, maybe try some baguettes. I've never tried baguettes before. To do some hamburger buns, and I've got a long history of cooking hamburger buns, but I haven't done it much for a while, and I certainly haven't done it much in the wood oven. I think I've only done them once, and they turned out a little bit of an odd shape. They were cooked nicely, but I've got to work on them so that they are the right size to take a good piece of meat patty and all the other nice fillings that you'd put on a burger. And then I might try some sweet things and stuff as well. And I'd also like to try making a good old Kiwi meat pie, see if I can do that in Thailand. A meat pie for New Zealanders and Australians, and I think the British as well. It's a small pie. It's just like a single serve pie. And when I was at school, it was something you'd go to the tuck shop for at lunchtime. You'd get a mince pie or a mince and cheese or a potato top pie. And in the winter time they were nice and hot, nice and warm, but never anything particularly special. But these days you pull into a gas station in New Zealand or a good bakery or all kinds of places, you can pick up a really good gourmet meat pie, and there's far more variety of pies and stuff available now of high quality than there ever used to be. And so I'm inspired to try and make this Kiwi staple. I've got it's a favourite of mine when I go in, particularly if I'm going into the UN Irish pub in Chiang Mai to watch some rugby. I will always sit down and either have one of their Guinness beef pies or a steak and onion pie, and it comes with good chips and potato chips and peas and carrots with some gravy and a bit of HP sauce, and it's always a really good feed, good bit of foreign food for me. So I'm going to practice and see. I've never ever tried to make a pie before, and the pastry for a crust of a pie is quite different than doing bread pastry or doing bread dough. So we'll have to experiment and see what's happening with that. Oh no, looks like my fire's gone out. That's not a good start. Maybe my wood is still a bit damp. Alright, we'll get some more of my magic kindling on there. I guess that's what happens when you're live streaming and talk too much to the camera. Forget about the fire, but it looks like it's going to kick in again for now. So what I've been learning so far too is getting the bottom of a pizza's nice and golden brown. So in the base of the oven I've got a piece of granite, nice smooth granite that a friend of ours gave us, and it gets fairly hot but not really hot enough for my liking. So I'm going to see if I can bring the coals out a little bit more over the over that piece of granite just before I start baking to give it some extra heat, and see if we can get it working a bit better and get the base of my pizza, because we do a thin crust, so it needs to be nice and crispy on the bottom so it's firm enough to hold everything, so that when the pizza's fresh out of the oven and it's nicely baked, it's not kind of drooping in the centre. It's looking good again, doesn't take much to get it up to speed. We had guests last week that ordered some pizzas. It was a family staying, and they're here for a couple of nights, so we invited them to try our pizzas. They ordered four for one each, and they didn't leave a crumb on the plate, so I'm very happy with them. And then the next day, actually, the dad told me that they'd actually never eaten pizza quite like it. They'd only ever bought like a frozen pizza from the supermarket. I just thought, no, there's not really much comparison between a fresh wood-fired pizza and one from the supermarket. And the evening that we were doing it, my wife Pansa was not feeling well, so we asked our housekeeper to come in, the lady that does our housework for us, young lady that lives just locally, so she came and assisted me with it, and we gave her a pizza to take home. And as I was making it for her, I'd asked her, I said, do you eat pizza very often? She said, no, I've never eaten pizza in my life. So that was a bit of an eye-opener. She said, oh no, to buy them here in Thailand, it's like a pizza company, big franchise type of stores, and they're expensive to buy compared to regular, just a normal dish of Thai food. You could probably spend 5 or 10 times as much on a single pizza as you do on a plate of paka pao or pad thai or khao pat or something like that. And so she said she'd never eaten a pizza because they were just too expensive. And she came in the next day and was just wide-eyed and raving about the pizza, how good it was. So I think she'll be down for coming and helping some more to earn a bit of extra pocket money and to take home a free pizza with her as well when we do it. This is looking a bit better again. Maybe I need to leave the door off until it's really going well. And here's some of this is bamboo from our columns, our bamboo, and it's it's really good for the fire, but I make sure to cut them into lengths that are cut between the nodes. There's no chance of it exploding, because if there was 2 nodes and the piece in between, it heats up and can explode. It's a little bit dangerous, but like this it's safe yeah, this bamboo's incredible. Even sort of from the very, this must be from the very base of the culm. There's no actual hole in it. It just is nice, thick, strong bamboo. So great for using in the garden, great for building with. But once it's past its use by date and no longer stable for in the garden, then it comes here into the fire, and because it's nice and solid, nice and thick, it burns nice and hot. Well, when it's dry enough. Now that I've got a bit of heat going in there, I can hear it hissing. So I'm figuring that maybe my wood's not as dry as I'd hoped. So what I'll do with some of these heavier pieces is I'll just pop them in over the other side. And they can dry out. And so while the fire's heating up, they can be sitting over the other side and drying out. Because my oven is, it's not symmetrical, you may have noticed. That on this side here, we've got more of a bulge out there because I wanted to off-centre it so that the fire's got a little bit more room on one side. We can keep it to one side. But I'm also going to experiment with putting some fire maybe around the back once I've closed the door, pushing it out further, and just seeing how that works. Just to get the fire wrapping around, because it's definitely noticeable once the fire's all across one side and we start putting the pizzas in, that side cooks more quickly. Just a matter of getting the tray in there and turning it and keeping an eye on it, because they only take a few minutes to cook, and so just got to turn it every 30 seconds or a minute or so. Yeah, some of that wood's got a fair amount of moisture in it, because I can just hear it hissing and that, so it might take me a little bit longer than I'd hoped to get the fire going today. This wood's been sitting down here for, some of it's been sitting there for months, since the dry season, since our hot season, but it's been so humid lately. Even today, it hasn't rained for a few days, but it's still really humid because, I'll take you to have a look over here. It's favourite time of year at our place is because the rice fields are planted, so there's a lot of water that just sits there and flows in, and it's just absolutely beautiful. But it does tend to make things a bit more humid around here at this time of the year, and certainly at night you notice it, the humidity, and also the frogs. The frogs are just out there having a party and super loud. It's amazing, they're so loud, thousands and thousands of them. But it's natural. It's a really pleasant sound. It's not a harsh sound at all. It's starting to look better. It seems to have caught well. I might put a bit more bamboo. That seems dry enough. Trying to see if I've got some older drying, definitely drier pieces in there. I was trying to think the other day when my earliest memory of eating pizza, but there's nothing special there. There's nothing, I guess we used to have them every now and again as kids, but usually probably bought from the supermarket or something like that. And I honestly can't remember the last time, or the first time that I ate a real wood-fired pizza, but possibly at one of the restaurants in Chiang Mai that's got a wood oven. But that's got to be going back a long time already. And then from the very beginning of when we were building here, I just had the idea of building a pizza oven, and my lovely wife just kept reminding me every now and again, it's like, come on, you talked about this for too many times every time I bring it up. And so we put a big push, and eventually I got it finished last year. And but it's a bit of work. We because I've put it here over a bit of an embankment there. So I had to make sure that base was nice and solid, because there's a lot of water, and this is water runoff from the rice. It comes down and it just seeps through underground. So I just wanted to make sure that whatever I was building down here was on a good solid foundation, and that I wasn't going to see any problems with it slipping away from me. So pretty confident that it's solid. There's some good and then like prefabricated slabs for the floor that go right through, and then even on this part here there's a good strong footing underneath it, so it should last a few years. Get a few pizzas cooked, get a few loaves of bread through it, and yeah, but it's been a fun project. Originally I was going to get someone else to do all the block work around it, because I've never done any before, and so we got the base, built the platform for it, and it sat there probably 18 months or 2 years without anything happening. We're busy with other stuff going on, and then I guess partly because of COVID we had no customers, we had no guests coming through, so there wasn't a lot of motivation to get it finished. And until realising that the high season last year was going to come nicely, which it did, so I had it ready, or nearly ready for that, so we made the most of that. But once I got the base in, it was just in my mind, the design, because I wanted to put an area here for a grill as well. There's a little grill under there, so we can barbecue there as well, and I just wanted to make it a bit multifunctional, have it underneath the roof here. And yeah, so if we weren't making pizzas, I can make hamburgers or grill some ribs or something like that. And so this design was in my head, and how to do it, and put the base in to make it high enough. Building the oven wasn't such a stumbling block or a hesitation for me. It was just getting the base done. And so I had in my mind to get someone that we know to come, a local guy, to come in and do the base for me, because he's quite handy with his brickwork. But my trouble was being able to explain what I wanted, because I didn't have it drawn up or anything like that. And in the end I decided it can't be that difficult to put a few bricks on top of each other, so I did it myself. And it wasn't too hard. And then Pansa saw it and said, oh, you can do that, okay, well how about something else, and maybe cover it a bit more. And we've got all sorts of ideas. Well, I've got all sorts of ideas of what else I might do down here, because it'd be really great if I can put up another area with a workbench, and to knead my dough, and to prepare everything, maybe even get a refrigerator down here, and just so I can do the whole lot in one place, because at the moment it's a lot of walking between here and the kitchen, and especially if I've got a bad ankle, and if that's playing up, then it's a bit too much walking, and I'm hobbling around by the end of the night. So if I can do everything down here, it's going to be much easier, much more streamlined, and I like the idea of that. Okay, now we've got some action in there. Put some bigger pieces on. okay for a little while. I'm just going to go and pop one or two of the bricks in the hole at the back. So now that the fire's established itself and looking pretty good, I will restrict the amount of air coming through the back. I guess I could have started this with a bit of a disclaimer. I'm not an expert. I'm just messing around here, just trying it out. Good Kiwi tradition of, oh yeah, I've got an idea. Let's see how well I can make this work. And as I did say at the beginning, this is a week or so, number of days in a row of practice to get used to it. And just to share it, to encourage it. That it's not rocket science. I have no idea how long this type of oven has been around, but the basic idea of it is pretty international. There's videos online of people cooking with wood-fired ovens made from earth or made from brick all over the world. So I think it's got to be one of the oldest types of cooking, apart from just cooking on an open fire, but one of the probably the oldest type of baking method that there is. And it's fascinating to see through European cultures, Eastern European cultures, down through the Middle East and Asia, all around. I haven't seen any from Africa, but I dare say there's plenty of them there. And it's it's just a great technique to get back to real basics and try and understand how it works, and just to experiment. And I guess the people that first started building these, that was the way they learned how to do anything as well. Except for now I've got YouTube, not just to learn from, but to share what I'm doing. That's looking pretty good. I might just put one more chunky little piece on there. Something else I'm getting used to is the temperature. Put the piece in, it fell down, so I put my hand in, I thought, oh yeah, that's starting to get hot. And the more I do this, the more I realise, and certainly once it's up to temperature for pizzas, yeah, I can start getting my hand in closer and really feel that, yeah, it's time. But it's a matter of also looking at the thermometer. So we've got a thermometer inside that's giving me the ambient temperature, and then I've also got a thermometer, I'll grab it in a minute and bring it down, that measures the temperature off the base and off the walls, off the roof of the oven, if I want to have a look at that. But I guess it's a product of being a photographer, that we're used to reading both the ambient light and the reflected light, and I want to know, same with the temperature when I'm cooking, what's my ambient temperature and what's the temperature of the surface that I'm cooking on, because both of those things are important. I'll just wait down here a few more minutes just to see that my fire doesn't go out again. And now that I've put the door on, just leave it open a little bit more than that. And I think there's enough base of a fire there that it'll keep going. And not be going out again. That's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. I can't hear it hissing so much, so I must have got some good dry wood in there. But I'll just leave it another couple of minutes and see how we go to make sure, because if the fire goes out it's going to be a long slow process. The first time that we did fire the oven up, my friend Bill was here and we were ready to cook some pizzas, and I was a bit nervous about it and I was being a bit too cautious. I wasn't sure how hot I could get this fire going, and it was way cooler than it should have been. We did manage to cook some pizzas, but it took us a long time. And the next time I fired the oven up, we had a good friend of ours, one of the locals here, Kun PJ, had come up, and she'd actually helped us build the oven. She's had a hand in building 7 or 8 or more ovens now. And she said, "Oh no, Kevin, you need to put more wood, and really get it hot." So that day we were cooking pizzas in 3 or 4 minutes. And that's what we like to do. So now I've learned, now I know how hot it needs to be, and just to get it up to that temperature so that we're not waiting around endlessly for pizzas. It was like trying to cook them in our ratty old gas oven inside. It takes forever. Okay, that's looking good. I'm happy with that. So I'll go up now and have a look inside at the pizza dough. And again, this is something else I'm continuing to experiment with. I've been making pizza dough off and on for years. The last sort of year or so I've done a lot more practice and a lot more experimentation with it, and I want to keep improving it, because to get the dough right is just so important. You can't have a good pizza unless you've got a good pizza dough. And there are some fabulous people on YouTube and online generally that are very, very generous about sharing their experiences and just, how to make good pizzas, how to really work with the dough. And so today I'm doing something a little bit different, and that I am using, for the first time for me, is what's called a Polish. And this is a pre-fermented mixture of yeast and water and honey and flour that's been sitting in the fridge overnight. I mixed it yesterday, and apparently this pre-fermentation will help me make a better pizza dough. So we'll give it a shot and see if we can make it work really well. So let me just go and get that, and I need to check on something else. I'll be back in just a minute. So there's my Polish. Just looks like a wet sloppy dough. That's all it is, it's all it's supposed to be. Wash my hands, I do that fairly frequently. So, I guess that's what it's supposed to look like. And now to it, I will add a few more ingredients. Another 100 ml of water, and he's specifically said to add cold water, so I'll just grab that out of the fridge. So then it kind of delays the fermentation process. You don't want it happening too quickly, apparently, and certainly in it's not too hot today, but certainly in the northern Thai climate we get some pretty hot days. I don't think I've ever made pizza at this time of the day, early in the morning, well, middle of the morning, but definitely have to be aware of the temperature, the air temperature and the humidity. Last week when we made pizzas for the visiting family for our guests, it had been raining all week, and that day in particular it had rained relentlessly all day, and so it was as humid as anything. It was crazy humid, and so I decided that if I was going to bake pizza, I was going to bake a lot, which was a bit of a mistake. I should have just made a few, but I think I made 9 pizzas that night and a loaf of bread, so I was pretty exhausted by the end of it. And one of the key issues there, apart from the humidity, which made the dough extremely sticky, was that it was taking a longer time to get everything done. And so as time progressed and I got to the last pizzas that were for us and for our helper, the dough had just sort of spread out, and then the dough from the loaf of bread, it was sitting here on the bench, and it had risen beautifully, but once I came to move the tray, it collapsed. It was just too soft and too moist. So that was baked all right. It was okay, but it wasn't as fabulous as I'd hoped it would be. But that's why I'm doing this. This is why I keep on trying, because takes practice, and I haven't had enough of that, so this is what it's all about. I'm going to check my notes because I'm just trying to follow through on how this works. So now to add some more flour. Mix that in. The other thing that I'm learning too is the amount of balance between flour and water, and how many pizzas that I can make with a single mixture. So today I'm aiming for, I think, 4 or 5 pizzas. And then we're going to freeze some of them and see what we can do if they are good for thawing and heating and serving like that, so that we can have a quick meal from the freezer every now and again that's a little bit more exotic than a frozen pizza you might buy at the supermarket. Good, it's still like super sticky. So add that. Okay, and let's just salt. Teaspoon and a half of salt. Eat some salt there. And mix that in. The remainder of the flour for the mix. I'm not even going to give you a recipe for this because you can probably find more accurate ones online. So I'm practicing, I'm not doing a cooking show. I'm not giving you recipes or anything like that. Hopefully that's not what you're here for. But just sharing my experience. And it's the way I like to learn, is by seeing how other people do it. I've been a photographer most of my working career, and learned my trade, learned what I learned to do by watching others and gleaning from others how it was done as much as anything, and then reading books, going to galleries, going to shows, and learning as much as I could from other photographers. And this is the way I've learned to bake as well. I was in the garden the other day and thinking about my dad, and because Dad always had a wonderful vegetable garden. And I was thinking, I wonder where my dad learned to garden, how he learned to garden. He was from the Netherlands. He probably didn't have a garden when he was a kid because the country was occupied by the Germans, and certainly as far as I know, as he was growing up, he didn't have much of a garden at all, if any, and didn't have anyone to learn from. I challenged my mum the other day and said, "Hey, how did Dad learn to garden?" And she just said, "Oh, trial and error." But okay, that's how I learned. That's how I figured this out. Most of what I do by trial and error. But he also had the book, and the book was a real classic New Zealand gardener's book called the Yates Gardening Guide, and it was a wonderful old book. But that was how he learned to do, what his source of information was. And I can remember when I was in my early 20s and doing my own garden for the first time, that I also had a Yates Garden Guide. But, a lot of what we learn, of course, is from the internet, and more and more and more as time goes by, it's mainly from YouTube. So this is going to be interesting here, because this dough is way stickier than what I'm used to, but I'm just going to follow through as best I can, and work with it to see if I can not add any more flour. This is the technique that I've been using, and this Frenchman, which I could remember his name, Richard somebody, had shown me this method, and I've practiced it, but this is a combination of his method and an Italian guy, an Italian pizza specialist, also whose name I can't remember. I'll have to add some links, I guess, but I watched him do this a few times with his bread mix from Polish, and one thing he did comment on, that it should be cold, and this is nice and cold. It's been sitting in the fridge, and I've added the cold water to it, and it's actually not too sticky, but to work it like this, he was working with a bigger piece of dough to make more, but it's just a matter of, both these guys, both these expert bakers, saying don't add more flour when you've got a sticky dough, because it changes the chemical relationship, changes the mix too much, and that instead of adding more flour to the mix, add more air, and the way to do that is just by working with it like this. So kneading it a bit, and then letting it sit and then coming back to it. So it does seem extremely, extremely wet, and I'm tempted to put more flour in it, but I'm not going to, not at this stage. So what I'll do is I'll just knead it a little bit more, get it mixed in a bit more. Now I can already start to feel it, and the gluten starts to develop, and then it becomes less and less sticky the more air it gets in it, and the more the gluten develops. And as the gluten develops, it just begins to hold together better, and then it's much easier to work with. So I think what I'll do, because it seems to be extremely wet, I will just try and contain it a little bit, and then I'll go down quickly and see how my fire's doing down there, because I don't want to leave that too long. I don't want to risk it dying down too much and losing the heat. Sticky, sticky. This is the, I've done this a couple of times. I've done a few things recently with video when I was putting the final layer of lime plaster on the oven. And I made a video on my YouTube channel about that a few weeks ago, and that was tough going, because I was just covered in stuff, and then trying to manage my cameras, trying to manage 2 or 3 cameras when my hands were dirty, and that wasn't much fun. Baking is not so bad. It's not like I'm working with a sticky plaster or anything like that, but I'll just cover that and leave it for a couple of minutes. Wash my hands. And now let's go back down and see if our fire's doing all right. Oh, yeah, here's our little pigeon. You're going to come and help? Come on, come on. You're going up on your shelf again, are you? Okay, up to you. I don't really want to encourage the bird, because she just gets a little bit too involved sometimes, and she comes in and I guess she thinks she's helping or looking for food or something, but she gets right into it and gets real close. She's not at all shy. How's that? Can you see that okay? What's happening in here? Oh, it's looking good. You can feel the heat. Feel the heat. That's where the glove comes on, because it's hot in there. So I can get that wound up a bit more. It's quite hot. It's getting a nice bit of heat in there. And it's up to probably about 150 Celsius. So far the flame's kind of coming around reasonably. Can you see that okay in there? but ideally I want to fire that up a whole lot more, get it really ripping around. It comes, hooks down. I've even had in the past a couple of times I've had pieces of drying on the other side here ignite because the flame's just hocking down and setting on them, and it's because the ambient temperature is so hot, it's so dry in there that it just burns, and that's ideal. So we're looking to get it up to 300, 350 Celsius and going from there. Here she is. So we'll leave that to its thing. Good to see that it's burning well. Not struggling too much with damp wood or anything like that. So just come on back to my bread, come on back to my dough. Just been sitting for a minute or two. It's not long, but we'll I'm just kind of keen to get that consistency good, of course. Because that's the main key to getting a good dough. It's so much about the consistency of how wet, how dry, how sticky it is. And it's good, it hasn't spread out too much. And like I said, this is a slightly different method, or quite a different method than I've used, because I've not used the polish, and so this stage of the dough mixture I'm not usually working with anything so sticky as this. The technique that I'd learned from the French baker that I'll start doing in a minute is sort of similar to this, but it's not working with such a sticky loaf, such a wet loaf. I don't think I can. I think this is still too wet. To be able to manage to really slap it and stretch it the way he does. But the Italian baker that does the polish like this, he also uses that same slap and fold technique to bring more air into the dough. But I'm wondering if it's possibly because of the humidity that my dough actually might be overhydrated, because it's sort of changing a little bit, but it's not changing much. I'll give it a few more minutes and see if I can mix a bit more air into it. Scraper back into that again. It's really good having a good surface to work on. That's so important. You've got the bench, you've got some nice tiles, that big tiles put down on here last year, and it's made a big difference, especially when I'm baking bread. Okay, let's see if I can, no, it's not. Not what I'm normally used to. Normally I can pick up the whole lot and it sort of hangs, but this is sort of sticking in. much on my fingers. As I work on this process, and I'll show you later when I do the bread, it's much less sticky than this, and it's easier to see that what's happening, because this is just problematic in that it's just super sticky. I think I'm going to cheat a little bit, pop a little bit more flour into that mix because it's just not doing what I was hoping it would. Just a little bit, not even a third of a cup, not even, what was that? Yeah, a third of a cup. It was less than that, so maybe another quarter of a cup, and already I can feel a difference in it. But it will get to a point where my hands don't look like this. The dough settles down and can come off your fingers without much of it at all staying behind. So I don't want it on my fingers, I want it in the bowl, because the more is on my fingers, the less there's going to be in the pizza. No, but it's still, yeah, crazy sticky. This is amazing. I've never had it quite like this before. But at least now I'm managing to get most of it off the bench when I lift it up. So this is the tricky part, because it's super sticky, and the first few times I did this with my regular bread, which was not as sticky as this, I had bits of dough flying everywhere. Hello bird, yeah, you can stay out there, I don't want you in here. Okay. Good, starting to feel a bit of change in there. So my cheek worked well, I'll do it again and just pop a little bit more flour. Not much at all, so that's still probably less than a quarter of a cup that I've added out of a total of nearly 4 cups of flour, so it's not really altering the ratio very much at all. Should be okay. So I'll just try and get a reasonable amount of this off my fingers. Mix it some more. sorry, just peering at my camera, there's a few numbers on the YouTube live stream. I don't know if there's anybody leaving comments. I can't see that. I'm not really interested at the moment. Maybe in a future live stream I'll put comments on and be able to spend some time answering them, but that's not what I'm about. I'm about focusing on what I'm doing here. And I can talk and focus at the same time, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time answering questions or anything like that. I'll have a look at those later on. But there's a little number up there. Someone's given me a thumbs up, and apparently there's nobody watching, so I could do it naked. Oh. Not that I'm going to do that, but it's just a silly little thought. Probably fewer than none people would watch it. But certainly, if I was a pretty little female in my 20s with a nice figure and not wearing much clothing, I'd be getting a lot more views than this, because that's the way it is. You can see the number of women making roti or somtam in Bangkok or other places, that it's not so much showing off what they're making as what they're making it with. And there's not a lot of clothing involved in some of those videos. It's sort of borderline porn. But slowly starting to feel like I expected it would. Let's scrape up a bit of this excess. Not going sitting there too long and going dry, because then it won't mix in properly with the rest of the bowl. But it's still way too sticky and still clinging to my fingers far too much. So take it off again. I was watching these professional bakers, these guys on YouTube, and they like their plastic scrapers. I was thinking, I wonder what they used traditionally. What was before bakers used a plastic scraper? What did they use? I guess it was a metal scraper, but even before that they must have used something. So I don't know what the traditional tool was. But certainly the plastic scraper is very much a go-to tool for these people. Now I'm going to let that sit a little bit more, because it's just too sticky, and as I let it sit, it'll continue to change. It's sort of leavening, it's fermenting, and the gluten is really starting to work, but it's still not enough to be able to really get it to a point where I'm going to be able to shape, or that it's at a point where I can leave it before I shape it. Because it needs to come away from my fingers much more easily than this. It shouldn't have to be, when it's ready, I'm not going to be using the scraper to get so much off my fingers as I am now. Clean it off. And the flour I'll need just to wash my hands again. A bit cleaner around here, but I'll just leave that sitting for a few more minutes. I'm going to go for a wander back down to the oven while I do that. I'm just going to go and check on something just quickly and I'll be back in a jiffy. Okay, let's go and see what's happening down with that fire down there, and just give a bit of a visual update. I'll grab my other thermometer here. I think about what I'm doing with this camera, don't I? It's a little bit unusual for me to be using my phone so much as this, but it is the tool for choice. The most practical one for this sort of little exercise here. Good, I'll just angle it up. I can hear the fire nicely in there. Well, there we go. Exactly what I was saying about the wood on the other side of the oven igniting. We'll just leave that there. Wow, that's gotten really hot in there. It's looking like it's just about to temperature already. Yeah, she's good. It's up to 300 already. Have a look at that. Can you see that? That flame just peeling around the top there ever so nicely. Wow, that's hot. Don't want to be too close to that. That's come up to temperature real fast. It says that I've been recording for about an hour and a quarter. That's fantastic. There's a lot of wood in there. Let's move that one around. That is so hot. concerned about my little thermometer on the back there, that it's too close to the fire. There we go. I'll just scooch it out of the way a little bit. That's firing up nicely. Okay. Put that on there, and it's happened much quicker than I thought. It's got up to temperature so fast, and but my pizzas are going to have to sit for another hour or so. So I'll just gently feed the oven and see what else. Maybe I can find something in the fridge to bake, some potatoes or something like that. So I've just blocked the vent at the back of the oven, and so that should slow it down a little bit. Keep my workspace a bit clean here. So that's a little bit of an interesting dilemma there. To have it so hot fast. It's not a complaint, I'm just burning a little bit more fuel than I need to, but it's great to know that within the space of just an hour and a half, or not even an hour and a half, hour and a quarter that I've been recording, then the oven's up to temperature already. So usually it takes a bit longer than that. But that's okay. I need to drink water. So I kind of just want to leave that covered there for a minute or two or three longer. But I'm also thinking, because I've got that oven so hot so quickly, I'm going to need to work on my loaf of bread, which is going to need to sit for a while. Oh, that should be okay. It should be okay once I get my pizza dough rolled into balls. That needs to sit for an hour, and then I can spend that time making my bread, mixing my bread. It smells good. There's something about a good yeasty smell that I like. I can remember when I was a kid, my mum always had baking, go to school. We'd have some biscuits and cookies in the lunchbox, and they were never store-bought. They were always homemade, and fabulous. Just really didn't realise. Most kids didn't have that, or did kind of realise it, because the kids that would have the cookies that had been bought from the store, they'd say, "Oh, can we swap them for some of your mum's baking?" Which to me was just, it was normal. It was part of the course. So, once we got into a bit of a habit of doing that and swapping the homemade baking for the store-bought sweets, because we didn't get to eat those because Mum made her own. I just didn't realise how spoiled I was having all this good baking. I think my mum used to bake bread from time to time as well. Can certainly remember the Sunday loaf, but that was bought from the local dairy. I think there was a special whole unsliced Sunday loaf that I can remember as a kid. We'd go down and buy it hot, and then when I was a teenager I worked at the local supermarket. Started working there, I think I was just 13, just turned 13, and decided I want to go and get a job. Went to a bunch of supermarkets and other places and ended up close to where I went to school, and then I thought, oh, there's a bigger one down in town a little bit further away, down in Browns Bay. Ended up getting on the wrong bus to come home, but it took me down to the Moringi Bay shops, and there was one small supermarket in there that I thought, oh, might as well try, might as well go and see if they've got any jobs, and just went in and asked and pretty much got hired on the spot, I think. So I used to work there after school, and then within, I can't remember when it happened, but this particular supermarket is the first one in New Zealand that started opening on a Saturday morning. This is when shops were closed on the weekends. I'm that old. And there was no supermarkets open on the weekends in those days. And this one little super value in Moringi Bay started opening on a Saturday morning. Or it might have changed. It became a Woolworths. Woolworths bought that chain out. And so they started opening up on a Saturday morning, so we would get to work Saturday mornings, and it was extremely popular at the beginning. And then the next innovation that they did as a little supermarket in Moringi Bay was to open a bakery. And I think it was also the first bakery in the country that was in a supermarket, and no supermarkets had had their own bakery before that. And that was the preferred job on a Saturday morning for us guys. If you get half your shift working in the bakery with Clive. Clive was an Englishman, lovely chap, and super passionate about baking, really just totally into his craft. And he worked like a machine, baking loaves and loaves and loaves of bread, and we were, if you're assisting him, you're cleaning up and stuff, but you're also, once those loaves came out of the oven, as soon as we could touch them, as soon as they weren't burning our fingers, or probably before when they'd still burned our fingers, we were putting them into bags and shoveling them out to the customers who were waiting at the window, and there was always a long line of people waiting, whether they'd come in there to buy bread or not. As soon as it got close to being ready, they could smell it, and there really is nothing like the smell of freshly baked bread. And so those loaves of bread just disappeared really quickly, especially if they had cheese on them. You'd do a mixture of some with cheese and some without, and the cheese loaves are always just super popular. Now this is starting to get more of a feel, still sticking to my fingers quite a bit, but that's possibly my lack of practice at this technique as much as anything. But I can feel the bread, and you can see that it's so it feels dough, and you can see that it's lifting up a bit better. So I'll just keep working it like this, slapping it down and then pulling it, stretching it over, and that just incorporates more and more air into it, which helps the process, helps the gluten strengthen. But, oh, it's feeling good. So I think those two things, having a mum that baked and then that experience as a teenager helping Clive in the bakery, was just something that got me into the idea of baking and that. I've forgotten to plug my phone in, so I just need to do that quickly. Clean the hands off at least a little bit first. And my granddad was also a baker, my mum's father. Gus was a baker. I never knew him, but that was his profession, so there's something of that in my blood. Certainly from his side of the family there is, because his dad, my great-grandfather, Frederick Cooper, was a photographer. And I didn't learn about that side of the family much, or certainly didn't learn about Frederick Cooper or anything about him until I was in my 20s, and by that stage I was already well into photography myself without knowing, without being aware that my great-grandfather had been a professional photographer his entire career, and was had his own studio, had his own place set up in Ashburton. And then just recently, when I was in New Zealand, I was travelling with my mum. We were down in the South Island, and we went to Ashburton, and at the little museum, wonderful little museum in Ashburton, we were able to view some of my great-grandfather's actual photographs. So the first time in my life, I'd seen some online, but being able to see and to hold prints in my hands that he'd probably printed himself, certainly straight from his negatives. And I've got some young guy, the archivist at the museum, was extremely helpful and really kind, just a lovely young guy. And he has provided us with some nice high resolution scans of a few of those images. One of them is a photo of Mount Cook, which is New Zealand's highest mountain, and it may well be that it's the very first photograph ever taken of that mountain, because my great-grandfather was the first person to photograph it. Unfortunately, the photo has no date on it, so we can't be sure, but we know that he made 2 expeditions out to the Mount Cook area, and, where he photographed Mount Cook. And there's actually a couple of peaks named after him, because the survey team was so impressed with this young guy, this young photographer, Fred Cooper, who'd come out to photograph with them and help them document the terrain and the mountains of the Southern Alps in New Zealand. They named a couple of peaks after him. So there's apparently there's a Cooper and a Cooper's mate that are named after my great-grandfather, Frederick Cooper. So somewhere in my DNA is the photographer part of the family, and then also maybe the bread making from his son, from my grandfather. Well, I'm pretty happy with that. still feels a bit sticky, but I'm going to put that down to the weather. But it's scooch a little bit more flour in there. Just, yeah, seems a little bit too sticky. I'm kind of I want to press on because I don't have fires ready. But I think if I let it sit just a little bit longer and come back to it, maybe it'll be okay. But because it's still, I should be able to pick it up without it sticking to the bench like this. But I'm not able to yet, so actually I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm just going to mix in a bit more flour in there. Oops, not on myself. More of that off my fingers and give it another mix up, and hopefully I'll be satisfied with it. No, it's still too sticky. It's feeling nice, I'm feeling a change. Oh, I'm being too impatient. I think I'll leave that for another few minutes and see what we can do. Because if it's too wet, if it's too sticky to work with like this, then once I come to shape it into balls, it's not going to rise, it'll just spread out, and then that's I'll never be able to shape a pizza base out of that, because it'll just I guess if I leave it sitting there long enough, it'll just spread out and do it itself, but then it'll be stuck to the bench and I'll never get it in the oven. Yeah, that's too sticky. Sticky fingers, rolling stones. So I'll just cover that again, wash my hands and take a bit of a break from it. got to keep hydrated. Look on this, I'm not concerned about the oven at the moment because it's pretty damn hot down there. I don't think it's going to have a problem, so I can leave that. And actually I was just going to check my notes again about the next step for this. Where are they? Okay, I'll give this one more session with the slap and fold, and then I'll just leave it for the time to rest. No, I'm going to cheat. I know it's not supposed to do like this, but I'm not so confident in it because it's so wet. And of course I've been watching these guys on YouTube who've done this thousands of times. And they make it look so easy. But as I said earlier, I'm getting better. I'm working with a much stickier ball a day than I have done in the past, and the times that I've been practicing this and learning it. And it's not stuck all over the condiments there or sauces and stuff. And the first time I did it, I had bits of dough splattered everywhere. There we go. That's what it's supposed to do. Slap it, pull it out, and it comes off my get carried away. Comes off my fingers pretty easily now. So there's not a whole lot of dough stuck on my fingers for this last bit, and you can see most of it's coming up off the bench. And I can feel the difference in the dough. Just as that starts to really mix in with the flour that I've mixed in this morning, with the polish that I've had sitting overnight, the yeast is starting to really react, and the gluten is starting to build nice and strong. Okay, I don't want to overdo that. Now I will make a bit of space. Just here. Clean this up a little bit, and then we'll just again let this dough just sit for 15 minutes or so, and then shape it a little bit more, and then let it sit for about an hour, maybe a bit less than that because it's so humid, so hot here, that an hour may actually be too much. But I'll leave it like that. I'll just give it a little dusting of flour there, a big scraper because it's clean. And just it's still nice and sticky. Okay, and I'm just going to, not going to forget about you, but I'm just going to leave you there for a little while. Have a quick clean up and then check my fire again briefly, just to make sure. So let's go for a little walk back to the oven. Take my charger with me this time so I can plug it in down there. Although I don't think I'm going to be there for too long. We'll just have a look to see what it's doing, see how it's going down there, and make sure that it's still fired up and looking good. But at this stage of the process, it doesn't require a whole lot of attention because it's usually pretty much set and good to go. Crazy hot. That stone is 364 degrees Celsius. Can't clearly read the ambient temperature in there, but it's very similar. It's very, very hot. So I've got no worries about getting it hot enough for the pizza. I just have to keep it hot enough. So that big log that I shoved over towards the back has gone out now, so I'll just move him over a bit. and I just moved a couple of those coals onto the granite as well to see if I can get that a bit hotter and yeah, see if I can build the temperature there even a bit more. But it's 360, it's 364. It's I think hot enough. It's pretty good for the pizzas. It's certainly too hot for bread in there at the moment. I need it to be about 160 degrees cooler, so almost half the temperature. But that's okay. We can do that over time once I've got my pizzas done. And I got to mix the bread first. I haven't even started doing that yet, but that's the next step. But I'll just wait down here a few more minutes and just check a couple more things to make sure that we've got everything ready to go. I need to rinse my towel and have that ready so I can clean my base. And then I'll just give it a bit more of a sweep around here. It gets a bit dusty. And I want it to be nice and clean for when I bring the dough and the pizza toppings down. I gave it a pretty good clean this morning, but there's always a little bit extra, and the cleaner we can get it, the better. Oh yeah, that's burning like there's no tomorrow. It's going to be fun cooking pizzas in there today. I need to make sure I'm really on the ball. Usually I've got someone helping me, but I can do this. Let's see how we go. I'm very glad that it's a good day. It's nice and cloudy. It's not too hot. It's doesn't feel like it's going to rain. Doesn't look like it's going to rain. So that's good. I certainly need to be keeping my phone plugged in. It doesn't usually get this much use. It hasn't probably had this much use in its lifetime, this phone. And I've had it for a long time. Not a big phone user, but here we go. It's a camera for live streaming. Again, work to get my bench clean again. And then I'll just start mixing my bread. I'll get that underway. My method for the bread down pretty well. I've been doing it for a long time. So it happens pretty easily. As I said, most of the time that I've been making this bread, I've been doing it in a bread maker, and so it's just a matter of plugging it in, adding the ingredients and letting it go, except for the last 6 or 7 years when we haven't had the mixer in the bread maker. And so I've been, again, mixing the flour and the water, the yeast, everything by hand, kneading it, and then putting it in the bread maker just to cook it. But when I was young and still living in New Zealand, I would do baking once a week, and I think I used to put 6 loaves of bread in the oven at home, in an electric oven, but I would mix and knead 6 loaves of bread at a time, and we'd keep a couple out of the freezer and then freeze the rest and eat them during the week. And so it's baking has been part of my existence for a long time. When we first moved to Thailand, I don't think I baked hardly at all. We didn't have an oven at first, and there wasn't much going on. I still would have baked bread. Actually, we had a bread maker. We bought one with us, and so I'd used that, and then didn't cook in an oven, didn't bake in an oven for a long time. But then we eventually got an oven, and I used to make hamburgers. I used to prepare hamburgers once a week. And used to buy the hamburger buns. I used to make the patties because here in Thailand you can't just go to the shop and buy frozen hamburger patties. Maybe you can now, but 20 years ago, 21 years ago when I first came here, you couldn't do that. And so I've developed a nice recipe for using pork for making hamburger patties, with a bunch of additives in it that makes it super tasty, some garlic, some onion, some ginger, some sauces and bits and pieces, and they're pretty tasty. And but one time when I'd gone to buy the buns and I couldn't, there wasn't any in the supermarket, and so I thought, oh, I'll try baking the buns myself. And after I did that once and they turned out pretty good, I was actually not allowed to make them. I'm not allowed to buy them anymore. I had to make them. They were pretty popular. So I used to bake hamburger buns every week. But it's quite different doing it in an electric oven than a wood-fired oven, and it's something that I haven't done regularly. I did do it regularly for a long time. But then for many years I didn't do it at all. And so now I'm sort of getting back into it. So I've got a bit of warm water in there. 20 mils of warm water. Got a teaspoon and a half of yeast in there. And it was warm water, just tempered water, just to help that yeast a little bit. And I'll give that a minute just to dissolve, just to relax into the water, and then stir it before I add my other ingredients. I'll just grab the flour. Wholemeal flour as well happening for this one, because I like a bit more of a substantial loaf for my toast in the morning than squishy white bread. But I haven't bought supermarket bread or 7-Eleven bread for many years. It used to be something that my ex would buy, and I was never impressed with it. It was just that really sweet, soft white bread with no guts to it at all. It was pretty boring. And then after she took off and I moved back into the house, there was a loaf of this supermarket white bread sitting on the bench, and it was rainy season, it was humid this time of the year, but it sat there for 2 weeks until I thought, oh, I better throw that out, I'm not going to eat that. And I thought, I was just about to chuck it in the trash, and I thought, I'll just have a look at it, and opened it up. There was no mould on this loaf of bread. It had been sitting in the bag on my kitchen bench in the humid heat of the sticky July and August in Chiang Mai, and there was not a single spot of mould on it, and it just disgusted me. I just thought that's terrible. The end piece of the crust and the first slice were a little bit dry, a little bit old feeling, but the rest of it still felt like it was brand new, like fresh baked. And I thought, what is in that bread that has kept it without any sign of mould or hardly any sign of going stale on a bench for 2 weeks? There's nothing in me that wants to put that stuff in my mouth and into my stomach. When I'm mixing bread, I know what's going in here. I know what to do. In fact, I'm I'm talking, I'm thinking about it, and I can tell you what goes in here because I do it in my sleep just about. I'm not usually talking so much about it when I'm doing it as I am today, but the mixture's pretty easy, and I've been doing it for so long. The regular loaf that I'll usually put on my bread maker, and it's just, it's healthy. It's got water, it's got yeast, it's got some sugar, it's got some oil, it's got a bit of salt, and then it has a mixture of, it has also an egg, and it has a mixture of wholemeal flour and white flour. And recently I've been experimenting a little bit more, adding a bit more wholemeal flour, getting my balance so that I've got about 50-50 or maybe even a little bit more wholemeal than white flour. I'll probably pull that back a bit today because I'm doing it in the wood oven. But when I'm doing it in my bread maker, I can mix it now because I'm using this other technique of the slap and fold that doesn't add more flour and keeps the bread dough much more hydrated, and it just rises so beautifully. And I found that I can adjust my ratio of wholemeal and white flour to get a more wholesome loaf, but still one that rises nicely. Previously, before I'd learned that technique, and actually even before I started adding an egg to it, which I'd learned will help it rise better, if I put too much wholemeal in it, then it would turn out to be too dense and not so enjoyable to eat. So I've just kind of changed the balance of that mix, and I'm quite happy with the result. I'm actually using a slightly different flour now too, so I'll do one, and where's my other cup? I'll do 1 1/3 cups, oh there it is there, of wholemeal, and I'll do 2 cups of white in this one, so a little bit more white flour than wholemeal. And I'm actually using a different wholemeal flour this time too that I'm used to. I went to a different bakery store in Chiang Mai, and they got a slightly different brand of flour, and it looks similar, but until I've used it a few times I'm never sure when I change flour what it's like. So mix that in there, add the white flour to it nicely, and then come back to put 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt in there. Mixed up, out of the way. Just nicely gently fold that in together so I don't get flour everywhere. And so this bread flour, this dough mix rather, because I'm so used to doing it, I've definitely got more of a feel for what it's like to work with it than I had with the pizza dough, because I haven't done the pizza dough so many times. Again, coming back to the very reason that I'm talking to you about this while I'm doing it and live streaming it, and it's just all about practicing and getting used to it and multitasking. I thought, well, if I'm going to do all of this week and baking, then I'm not going to have so much opportunity to be making a video this week. So instead of making a video, I thought, let's try live streaming, see how this works. Okay, what's my day looking like under here? Not too bad. No, I don't think I'm up to picking that up this time. I'll put a bit of flour on there, a bit of dough on there that I don't want to stick. Oh, it's feeling nice. So I think if my memory serves me right, at this stage it's just a matter of rolling it. Oh, you're not seeing it there. That's no good. You want to see what's going on down here. Adjust the tripod. How's that? Okay, that's better. So, listening to any of these bakers, they talk about keeping the top as your top, with a little dimple on the top of that. But they also talk about pulling it. And stretching it. Oh yeah, that's feeling nice. There's pockets over here. I'm not even sure if they're supposed to be there or not, but I guess so. This helps to just sort of tucking it in, and it helps to pull the surface of it tight and form a bit of a skin over it. I guess that's to help it stop spreading out too much. Oops, that wasn't good. I have a pretty dough ball. Happy with that. I'll stop fluffing around with it now. A little bit of oil on it. Pat it around and put a bit of a wet towel. So that is going to sit there for another hour. Okay, it looks like I might have lost contact somewhere 9 minutes ago, but looks like I'm still live. So I'll just leave that for a minute. I'll be back with you in 2 ticks. Okay, now on with the other loaf. So this one, a little bit less experimental, but still far short of the level of expertise that I'd like to attain to, that I'd like to achieve. And well, part of that is just practicing, but I keep changing things. And when I first did this, it worked so differently than what I'd seen on the video. I thought, wow, will I ever be able to do it like this? Go on the video. I don't expect that I ever will, because these have decades of experience. But I also realised that when he was demonstrating it, a bit flying around there, this is quite wet. But when he was demonstrating what he was doing, he's only working with white flour, and I'm working with a mixture of white and wholemeal. So I'll keep that as my excuse. But I think it's reasonable difference between the white and the wholemeal. I need to learn more about gluten and the way gluten works. I'm just getting my oven tray out here, so I am splattering this around a bit more. I'm just going to keep my sauces a bit cleaner over there. But with I need to learn a bit more about gluten and how it is with different flours and different mixtures and timing and hydration and things like that, because it all affects it. But I think with wholemeal flour, the gluten is different, and so it binds differently, it stretches differently, and so the dough holds together differently than if it was just all white flour. So with white flour, I think it's going to, the structure of the dough is definitely different. You can feel it, you can just get a sense of it much more readily, that it holds together more readily than a wet dough like this that is a mix of wholemeal and white. It's very wet, but it's not nearly as sticky as my white flour was, my white dough was earlier. The other thing that I've learned, and I want to learn a little bit more about, or understand better, is the time it takes. So as I've worked with the pizza dough, you've noticed I've left it for a couple of times, 3 or 4 times, I think, and just to let it settle and let the dough continue to work its chemical magic. So it's not just about kneading it and working with it or slapping it and folding it, it's just about giving it some rest time as well. Because that seems to be another key in getting that consistency right. Feeling pretty good, still quite wet, but that's what I want. Let's give it another scrape around, get some of these flyaways. current thinking is to be able to get good enough baking pizza that we can sell plenty of it. We think to sell it at the shop during the high season should be a nice alternative. Usually out on the main road we've got a little place that we've rented there. Bunsa's running a little coffee shop and restaurant out there, and it's on the way on the main road up to the highest mountain in Thailand, Doyantanon, and it's a huge national park that's extremely popular in the cool season and the high season here, which is sort of November, December, January, February, when the air temperatures are cool and a lot of people come from all over Thailand, mainly from Bangkok, because it gets pretty cold. It's we get down to the coldest I've measured here is 7 degrees Celsius one morning, so that's pretty cool. That's only about, no, that doesn't make sense. Trying to figure out in Fahrenheit for you. Celsius, that's about 40 degrees Fahrenheit. If there's anyone watching that understands what Fahrenheit is. And so people come from Bangkok to experience the cool weather. It never gets anything close to that in Bangkok. And then of course higher up the mountain, the cooler it gets up at the top of the mountain, which is another 2.3 kilometres higher than we are here. It gets to below zero, it gets to freezing and below. So, but most of the food that's available on the places on the way up the mountain is pretty traditional Thai food. There's some good food. It's got to be the best place to buy grilled chicken that I've ever found in Thailand. There's a bunch of places that still do rotisserie cooked chicken and chicken cooked over charcoal. It's not with a gas flame, and there's one lady that we found down there that is she just nails it every time. It's so good. We had some last night. Don't often eat it, but it's nice. But most of the food that's on the way is pretty traditional, pretty standard Thai food, and yeah, the chicken's a high quality, but a lot of the other food is at the little places along there is, let me say, not the same quality as a lot of people in Bangkok and places that have got a bit more selection, a few more options and variety. There's nothing much there that is really to a similar standard as to some of the fabulous food that you can buy in bigger places. So we're kind of thinking if we can sell pizza at our shop on the way up the mountain, it's going to be a little bit of an alternative, a little bit of a different alternative to the other food that's available. Whether it'll go or not, whether it'll fly off the shelf, I don't know, but we can only try. And so the initial thought is to start now, practice a little bit, see if we can do it. Probably even get, I'll need to train someone how to do it, and then we can ramp it up and get an oven down at the shop if it's something that's going to be that popular, and bake fresh pizza. But then also do frozen pizza for people who are going to be wanting to take a bit of a picnic up the mountain, so we can sell it to them frozen. The idea at the moment is to package in such a way that it's on a foil tray, and of course we'd have to practice this first, so this is something else we're doing. And if we can serve it up and package it so it's on a foil tray, all I need to do is unwrap it, leave it in the tray, and then pop it on the barbecue, pop it on the grill, and heat it like that, and see if it works. If it works, then that's going to be a really nice takeaway, pre-prepared food that you can take up and go camping up the mountain and have a nice pizza for dinner. That's the plan anyway. So we'll see if we can make that work. That piece doesn't want to be eaten. It's starting to feel pretty good. Happy about that. Much easier than the first batch of dough that I mixed this morning because it's something that I'm a bit more familiar with, so we'll keep at it. But I will just scrape down once again, and then I will just leave it sitting for a bit. Sticky fingers. Okay, so we'll leave that just for a minute or two. I'll clean my hands again. Feeling pretty good, looking pretty good. I might just have to go down, take a couple of accessories down to the oven, so without my camera, so I'll leave you to keep an eye on the dough for me while I do that. Okay, back to work. Not that I ever stop. That's feeling pretty good. One thing that I've realised today, and that I had the same problem when I baked the loaf last week and then forgot about it, is that I don't have a baking tin for bread. Usually when I bake it, it goes in the pan for the bread maker, but I really don't want to put that in the wood fire oven. But I've got a foil pan, so I'll use that. Next time in Chiang Mai, I'm going to need to buy some loaf pans. Okay, that's looking pretty good. It's still a little bit sticky, but I think it's time to move on with it. I'll just leave it there under a bowl for a little while and come back to it. What are we up to? About 30 minutes on the clock there for this one. It seems like it's rising quite nicely. I don't want to touch it, but I'll come back to that in a while and I'll start to get some of my toppings for the pizza ready. This is a tomato base that I make myself. Again, it's still experimental, and I've been making tomato chutney for years, and it's a variation on the tomato chutney recipe I use. And when I've got them, I use fresh tomatoes from our garden, and when I've got fresh tomatoes from our garden, particularly if they're an heirloom variety that I like to grow, then that makes the best tomato paste for a pizza. Because the heirloom variety that I've got, we've been growing in our family for the last 70 or 80 years. They're affectionately known as Uncle Leo's tomatoes because great Uncle Leo brought them back to New Zealand with him after he was shipped home from Italy, where he'd been serving with the army, New Zealand Army in the Second World War. He was captured apparently during the Battle of Monte Cassino, and once they were liberated, all the soldiers from the Antipodes couldn't get home as quickly as they'd like because there just wasn't enough vessels to take them back again. So they had to wait their turn to get a passage on a ship back, and so he was apparently billeted with an Italian family for 3 or 4 months and helped them out in the garden and enjoyed the gardening there, and came back home with some tomato seeds in his luggage. It's not something I'd try to do going into New Zealand anymore. It's highly illegal to bring anything like that into the country. But these seeds have come with me from New Zealand, and I've been growing them here for the last 5 years or so, and not getting the same sort of crops as I would as I planted them when I planted them in New Zealand. Down there I got to be able to grow them so that they were, one tomato was huge. You could hardly touch your fingers around it. One slice was enough for a sandwich or for a hamburger, and they are just fantastic. They are the most delicious tomatoes. Pansa doesn't usually like tomatoes, but she'll eat Uncle Leo's tomatoes because they are so sweet and so full of flavour and goodness. And so we've got other family members and other friends that I've given the seeds to as well. And so it's a really just an absolutely delicious tomato. Really ugly. They don't look pretty. They wouldn't look great on the supermarket shelf, but to me that doesn't matter a dot because they taste fantastic, and that's what really matters. They're more challenging to grow because the pests, the diseases like to come and get them. But at the end of the day, when the ones you can get to ripen and to size up well, it's well worth the effort, and nothing's wasted. So it's all good. I've got planted some now. I've got enough seed from the last season. Hopefully that I'll be able to keep planting them all year, and I'm just trying to try and do that to see if I can be cropping tomatoes all year rather than just in our cool season. So I've got some plants that are growing up now. I had some earlier in the year that didn't do quite so well, particularly during the hot season, our hot dry season here in April, and I was a bit distracted. I was away. I was actually in New Zealand for some of that time, so wasn't able to keep a track of my garden so well. But hopefully I'll get practiced enough that I'll be able to grow the tomatoes all year round and be able to have fresh tomato sauce for our pizzas made from Uncle Leo's tomatoes. So that can just sit there and wait. That's looking like a good consistency straight out of the fridge for that. This is from, I don't know, this may be sourced from Uncle Leo's tomatoes, but I'm not sure at this stage because they've been frozen and I didn't label my bag, so I'm not really sure about that. Enough talking for now. Well, I'll keep talking, but enough about Uncle Leo. We'll just see what we've got here happening with the pizza. Sorry, with the loaf of bread before we go and have a look at the pizza oven again. Certainly feels a lot different than the pizza dough with just the white flour, but it's forming a ball quite nicely. It's looking good and feeling good. I think I'm just going to put that in the tray and take it down with me to the oven and just let it sit down there with a towel over it. Because one of the problems I had with it the other night when I did cook a loaf in the oven, it had been so humid, there's so much moisture in the air, and the dough was so wet that it just it spread out everywhere. And as soon as I came to move the tray, I'd had it sitting in one of these trays. Then it just collapsed, it just sunk. So if I can get it down to the oven now, so when it's time to put it in the oven I don't actually have to move it very far, then hopefully I'll be a bit better off. But hopefully that'll rise quite nicely. I'll just get a wet towel for that. Cover that. Actually, I'll just let it sit there for a few minutes before I go to the oven, because I don't like this amount of mess. That should be all for the dough making yesterday, so we should get it cleaned up. So the idea today, the aim of the day, is to make some nice pizzas, but it's not, it won't be my normal run-of-the-mill. Because we're experimenting, I'll make some that are, I'll make a couple that'll be ready to eat, and then I'll also make some that are just going to be frozen. One that's going to be ready to eat frozen when it's pulled out of the freezer, and then I'll make some with probably just the tomato on the base, and maybe one with nothing on the base. I'll just cook the base or partially cook the base, so that we'll know what it's like to work and figure out what's going to be the best quality frozen pizza experience that we can create, and so that it's practical for us to be able to do it, and easy for us to train people to do it, and quality, and that's the main thing. So if it's going to mean that we can't keep the quality, if we bake a full pizza and freeze it and it doesn't thaw out very well, doesn't reheat very well, but if we can do it just the base, or maybe just the base with the tomato paste on it, and that freezes okay, then that's what we'll do. Then we'll add the other toppings and just cook it a little bit more once it's been frozen. Or should I say, once it comes out of the freezer, when people order it, we'll be able to pull it out of the freezer and reheat it, and either we'll have a full pizza that's ready made that we can reheat, and ideally that's going to be what's good enough, because then we'll be able to serve that up as long as it takes to briefly thaw it out and cook it a little bit more. So we're looking at working at that. I'm hopefully going to go and visit my friend Scott in Chiang Mai with a couple of frozen pizzas. He's got an oven, a little convection oven, and we'll test it to see if it works in that, and if that works well, which I think it should do, then we'll pick up one of those ovens and see how we go with that. But we'll practice it with a few different things, and if it's going to really work well, if we think it's going to be good business, then we will look at buying a little ready-made gas-fired pizza oven. You can buy them now, apparently pretty easily in Thailand. I've seen them online, I've seen other people use them, I've watched videos, there's tons of videos on YouTube of people with these either wood-fired or gas-fired ovens that are specifically designed for cooking pizzas, and they can just sit on your bench. So we'll be able to run one of those from the shop really easily, and keep it warm enough all the time, and see how we go. But if most of the time we're going to be using pizzas that have come out of the freezer and then we thaw them and cook them for people, we're going to want to have probably a little electric oven that heats up really quickly and is just quick and easy to work with. So that's pizza dough sitting there. I can see that it's getting bigger. It's probably been there for 45 minutes now, I think, and it'll be pretty ready to divide up and start to use soon. So I'm going to pop back down to the oven and have a look at that, and I've got my tomato there, I've got some cheese ready, we've got another couple of toppings, and I'm not going to talk about exactly what those are yet, you can wait and see, and then we will be ready to do some cooking, I hope. So I'll take this loaf down with me, and we'll have a look at the fire again, and then come back up here. Yeah, and at that point I will I think our dough for the pizzas will be ready, and we can do the separation of those into balls for the pizzas, and then be cooking with fire. So let's go for a walk again. I'm going to take one of my other cameras down with me this time, so my video might be a bit wonky because I'm trying to do everything with not enough hands, so bear with me for a minute as I very gently pick up the dough for the loaf of bread. Don't want to look up my nose, do you? But that's it for the moment. Close the door so the bird doesn't go and hit the kitchen too much. There you go, you can have a look at the garden. As I was saying before, I'd be a possibility in the future of doing a bit more building down here and organising it so that we've got an area for the kitchen to be down here as well, or for enough area to prepare all of the bread and everything else. Inside of my door's burning. It's pretty hot in there. I laugh, but it's not actually good. It's a bit of a worry, but what can I do? Take some photos. Take some photos of that. Just rest that door face down on the ground for a while. Pepe, be careful up there, it's hot, bird. Hey, come on. Psh. You don't want to be up there, I don't think. You'll notice that my broom's seen better days. It's because of this. It's hot in there, but got to sweep the ash out of the way. You don't want that on a pizza. Every now and again it'll just ignite. Good thing about having natural products, if it was a plastic broom, it'd make a bit of a mess. What's my temperature doing? Beautiful, 350, that's what I like. Oh yeah, you can feel it from this distance. Yeah, that's hot enough. Okay. I'll leave my door a little bit further ajar, a little bit out. It's going to bring a bit more air into it, but I don't think at this stage it's going to matter so much. I just don't want to burn my door away to nothing. I'll have to see if I can find something to put on the other side of that. Yeah, there may be some sort of product available. I can put a thin layer of some sort of fire retardant on my door. But yeah, that's looking good. My bread's sitting over there. Not sticking at all, and I will come back down with the bits and pieces that I need for getting the pizza toppings happening. The trays there. My thermometer. Okay, so let's go back and check pizza dough. Hopefully we'll just one more time and we'll have it. Hopefully it'll be all good to go, and soon it will be lunchtime. Anybody in the area come over for a pizza? Maybe after I've done this for a few days I'll have some visitors around lunchtime. Okay, well, let's angle that down so that you can see the pizza there, see the dough. That will soon be the pizza. Oh, look at that. I like that. There's no dough residue stuck on my towel at all. To me, that's a good sign. And look at that. A beautiful big block of pizza dough. Bit of oil in the tray. Not sure if I'll need that much. I won't put oil in there yet. There we go. Just open that up so it's handy. Now this is something I've not been very good at so far, and I don't have scales. I did have some, but somebody's borrowed them and taken them down to the shop, and they're not here. So it's very much playing it by feel. I'll see about. I think this is the right amount of dough to make 6 pizzas, and this is again something else that I'm not really that familiar with, is shaping them into balls, but we've got to give it a try. A little bit more flour on the fingers, that's better. All the bakers talk about keeping the top on the top and just stretching that. And there's one that I figure that's, yeah, it's about the right size, so and do a couple more. Hard to tell really, because yeah, it feels maybe a little bit small. Maybe I'll just mess around with size. Maybe I'll just aim for 5 rather than 6. A little bit more flour on there, because this piece here, I don't know if it's just the dough changing as I'm working with it. Don't mess around too much, but we'll just put 3 on there. Yep, kind of roughly the same size. One's a bit bigger than the others, but I'll just oil up this tray and then just do half. I think I'll just make 5. I'll become super cautious about using oil. Then looking at information online about cooking oil and how unhealthy it is. And it's one of the key ingredients in so much processed food. Vegetable oils and cornstarch, and they're both highly processed and find their way into most packaged food that we eat these days. And so I'm on a even more of a bender to avoid eating packaged foods, processed foods, because there's a lot of studies out now, there's a lot of research being exposed, being done, saying how, showing how incredibly unhealthy processed foods are, because our bodies are just not designed to eat them. Okay, I'm telling you this as I'm making bread, but this is kind of minimal processing. It's not like whatever's gone on to make this oil. The amount of processing that's gone into that is kind of frightening. And then I was reading about cornstarch, cornmeal and stuff like that the other day, that it is used. I've known this for years. It's used in virtually all processed foods because it's cheap. It's very flavour neutral, and it helps to bind and emulsify and do all sorts of weird things to your food that comes in a packet. And so it's highly favoured in the industry, but it's extremely bad for us and very difficult for our bodies to digest. And this one doctor even I was listening to the other day, he's written a book about processed foods and how terrible it is for our diets. And he has said that even if when we eat processed food, if we bite into processed food, our bodies don't recognise it. It doesn't trigger our smell. Like if we bite into an apple, we can smell that. We know it's an apple. Our brain tells our gut what to do with that apple. But with processed food, our brain doesn't know what to do with it. It's not pre-programmed to manage processed food. Maybe in another couple of 100 years, our bodies will have changed. Our brains would have adapted, and we'll be able to digest food that hasn't got any natural smell or natural flavour properly. But at the moment, our bodies can't do that, and it apparently correlates very much to the excess weight that a lot of people in the world carry around on our bodies these days. It's not so much about the fats and the sugars and the carbs, it's more about the processed food is the reason that so much, particularly of the Western world and the emerging countries, have these days, is because they're eating so much more processed food than ever before. So that's my little rant on that topic. You can take it or leave it. I'm kind of wanting to let these sit for a while longer. I do, but I don't. I want to get down and make pizza. No, and I've read the process wrong. I've done things too quickly. I've got to leave them for another hour before lunch. So you're not going to want to sit there and watch these rise. You won't be able to because I'll put towels over them. But I think I'll turn this off and we'll come back in an hour or so for lunch, for cooking. See you later.